welcome to our special session today, where we're going to be wrapping up 22 and taking a look at what we might expect in 2023. I'm Lisa Collins, I'm Managing Director of the Circle Society, and I'm joined by a fantastic panel who are all here to help me unpick what was great and maybe not so great with the year that's just passed, and then take a look with bounds of optimism about what 2023 is going to look like. To introduce my panel to begin with, I've got Ben Davenport all the way from Cologne today, who has got really bad bandwidth, so won't be sharing his photo. Ben, thanks for being with us.
No worries, nice to be here.
And then I've got Claire, who's Head of Marketing with the DPP. Claire, great to have you. John Feingold, who is Chief Marketing Officer at Signient, and last but not least, Rob, who's co-founder at Coretta Research. Great to have you all. So let's start with looking at 2022 and what a year it was. We obviously had the war in Europe affecting some of those supply chains, the projected recessions, that cost of living crisis. 2022, I guess, hasn't quite been plain sailing, and for marketeers, an even more worrying time, you know, with the risk of companies even reducing their marketing budget, or actually even stopping it. I've been hearing some of that recently. But it's not all doom and gloom. 2022 has had positive moments, and I think a personal highlight for me was getting back to face-to-face trade shows and meetings. Maybe a little bit controversial when it comes to return on investment, but I still don't think you can beat seeing people face to face and getting back to being human again. So I'm wondering whether we can reflect, each of us, on 2022, and maybe each of you talk through some of your marketing highlights and even lowlights from the year, what worked well, what didn't, and what you might be cutting moving forward. John, let's start with you on that one.
Yeah, definitely an interesting year. So as you point out, Lisa, you know, a highlight was certainly getting back to events, not just the big trade shows, NAB and IBC, but a lot of the, you know, smaller, more intimate events like the DPP Leaders Briefing, which we just had a strong presence at, some of the SVG and Mesa events and other just local industry those events were really positive for us. I mean, it was just amazing to see the energy. People were so happy to just connect face to face and have dialogues, and the energy was higher than anticipated. So that was certainly a highlight. I think on the challenging side, when everyone was in the office, we kind of knew the patterns of when to send emails and when to make calls and all that sort of stuff. Then when everyone was in lockdown, it actually in some ways it got easier to reach people because everyone was home and bored and didn't have a whole lot going on, and we had really good response rates to things. This year, as we're all in this hybrid world, what's been really interesting and challenging is people are just working weird hours. They don't answer their desk phone because they're not at their desk. Email open rates are very unpredictable. There used to be, well-known times when, you would send, marketing emails at certain times a day or certain days of week, and that data has completely gone out the door. And so we've had to really rethink just a lot of our approaches in terms of putting content in front of people and getting them to engage and kind of tweak the playbook there a bit to make up for, or to navigate the challenges of this hybrid world. But we're optimistic. We're growing. We're going to increase the marketing investment. We're going to going into 23. We're excited. We're going to increase the number of events that we'll be participating in. We'll be increasing the digital activities that we do, and we're remain optimistic about the opportunity, although certainly eyes on the world economy and and just navigating some of these patterns that I mentioned with the hybrid work.
And John, is there anything that you did in 2022 that you won't repeat again in 23?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, I don't think there's anything major. I think it's more just adjustments. So one of the things that we're kind of adjusting is moving towards just, again, because of the patterns of people and how they respond to stuff, moving to much more what we call snackable content, and moving away from sort of long form long form white papers and PDFs and webinars, and moving to series and collections of shorter content, and trying to, you know, kind of keep people engaged with this series of snackable related content versus hey, here's a big thing. And that allows us to kind of hit people on their phones at weird times, where you don't have maybe their full attention, but you can sort of give them a tidbit of information, pique their interest, and then get them back to kind of learn more and pull on that thread. So I would say that's not really a stop and start, but more of just an evolution of how we're marketing.
Yeah, no, some good bits there. So Ben, what were your highlights and lowlights in 22?
Well, I think I'll start with the lowlights, and for us, I mean, we were a very, very small team at the beginning of 2022. We're now a small team. We've grown quite a lot, but we're still small. But I did not anticipate, and I think a lot of us didn't anticipate, that events would come back with the speed and force that they have. And you know, the result of that was that we weren't resourced for it. And when it happened, maybe we weren't able to execute them quite as well as we wanted to, but it's certainly been an absolutely enormous workload the last 4 months, especially, you know, getting through all those events. So that's been a real challenge, and I think that has been a low light. You know, not being able to you know, stay focused on the kind of goals that we set at the beginning of the year, which were far more online and digital focused. But I think the flip side of that, you know, some of those events, as John said, have been amazing, and the buzz around them has been fantastic. I mean, you know, we're looking at at least a 10x ROI on IBC, which you know, I think is a hard thing to really quantify. But you know, just looking at the pipe and how that's developing based on opportunities that came up at the show, that's a staggering figure. I don't think it's one we would have seen previously, or certainly not for the last few years at IBT, and I'm not sure it's one we'll repeat, but it's certainly staggering, and is definitely kind of helping us guide our investments in 2023. Sorry, but yeah, that definitely was a highlight.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. Claire?
So yeah, I completely agree. The return on events has been really good for us as a business, but also as an industry. So I've been lucky enough to attend quite a few this year. And yeah, the buzz has been fantastic. It's been like excited puppies all seeing each other again. So yeah, that's definitely been a highlight. I think the low light, you know, it has been a really tough couple of years for marketers. So coming in to January with the gusto was quite hard, because I feel like everyone was on a bit of a low ebb and we're having to really navigate this new normal. And I'm, you know, a low light. Well, actually, we're still not really clear on what the new normal is. Kind of going to John's point, we're still remapping like when's the best time to send things. And I think this conversation about HubSpot really comes into play quite effectively, because it's really helping us to start to understand that new normal.
And HubSpot's something you've implemented this year, isn't it, Claire? And we've got a session on that next week to talk about it more. But you implemented that as a result of the activity that you were seeing in 22.
I implemented it because I was new to the company, but yes, yeah, it's going to be a good session next week.
Excellent. And Rob, although not a marketeer per se, talk us through your highlights and lowlights of the year.
Well, we're still a young company. We're now 12 people strong, which is not too bad, but it means we all have to do lots of things. So marketing is definitely part of it. Although this year, one of our highlights was hiring a dedicated marketing person. So we see that even in a small company of 12 people as being really important, because we're still in a huge growth trajectory. So the highlight for us has been growth and maturity, and we're now 2 years old. I think we've done a reasonable job of getting our name around the industry, but that's really what our marketing objective has been. So we've been trying to eat our own dog food in terms of the sort of research that we've been doing about what technology buyers and sellers want, and follow that. So very much using content-based marketing, but also trying to make it sort of really meaningful and intelligent. We just literally today launched our new website, which has been a long time in the making to get that right. But one of the colleagues saying, should we do a marketing post to say we've launched a new website? And I said, well, not really, because nobody cares that much. But instead, let's tell people about something more significant that's going on in the industry in terms of the size or the scale or the dynamics of it. So I think trying to kind of communicate really interesting content is key to us. And I've certainly found interesting, Claire, that you're using HubSpot, because we also love HubSpot. We make a lot of use of that, just really for tracking everything that we're doing. But the platform where we get most engagement is LinkedIn still. And so writing really sort of thoughtful posts on LinkedIn that give people some useful info and get a conversation going, that's been really, really invaluable to us. But you know, the other interesting thing is we've had some younger members of the team join, is how they've really embraced Instagram and TikTok in particular for making some great content. And while that might not reach our kind of an industry audience, it is actually really important in terms of communicating team culture when it comes to hiring people and building up the team. So that's been an interesting learning. Low light has actually probably been the last few weeks, because I think there's a bit of a grey cloud hanging over the conversations I've been having. I think everyone's a bit worried for the year ahead. I think there's a danger that everyone's going to talk themselves into a recession if they're not careful. I'm not sure it's going to be quite as bad as people fear, or I hope not. But that's been the low light, really. It's just a little bit of uncertainty into next year.
Yeah, I'd agree. But coming back on your highlight point about LinkedIn, I did a great Circle Society session with a guy around LinkedIn and how to use LinkedIn for your leads. And if you haven't watched it, have a look on the website. It really makes you think about you as a person and how you need to use it personally to engage with new people. And that was a key learning point for me. I really liked it. You know, you don't just have to think about networking in a room and how you look in the room. You need to think about how you look on social as well. So key highlight.
I urge everyone to follow a Twitter account called The State of LinkedIn, where they do screenshots of the worst examples of LinkedIn, of people being boastful and sort of trying to be humble while leaving their Porsche keys dangling in the background, that sort of thing. So yeah, that's always fun to see.
Oh, definitely worth checking out. So moving on, Rob, you did a piece of research on behalf of Bubble recently, and I thought it'd be useful if you could share some of the highlights that would affect marketeers within that research. There's certainly some golden nuggets that I could see. So if you're able to share some of those key points, that would be great.
Yeah, so it was our second annual media tech buying research that we did with Bubble Agency, where we talked to both buyers and sellers, and it was a mixture of detailed focus group interviews and survey. And Claire, I think it's really interesting because I know the DPP did something quite similar, and the good thing is I think both were really aligned with same sort of themes, so it's certainly common in the industry. But we found, we looked in particular about how marketers in vendors communicate their message, and whether is it more important to talk about product, or is it more important to talk about the company credentials to deliver those products. So what we found is what buyers want more than anything is honesty and openness. So no BS, do what you say, be credible, don't overpromise and underdeliver, don't say you can do things when you can't. Don't say, yeah, we can do all of these different features and tick all of the boxes when in reality you do just that bit. Say exactly what you do and what you do well, and that's what the buyers want to hear. Actually, the buyers do want both product and company information. So it's important for them to understand what a product does and where it fits into the market. But also they do want to know about the company. So what is the company culture? Can they work together? Collaboration is really important, particularly when it comes to implementing and jointly developing products. So that kind of cultural fit and alignment is really important. And buyers say they want vendors who are responsive and flexible and on the same wavelength, that they kind of get things done, that they don't feel that they're going to the back of the list when it comes to roadmap. So that kind of direct human contact is really important. Something that I think marketers can really do is don't just say, but also show evidence for things. So really important is things like case studies and references, and just providing evidence. So if you're making claims for your product or service, use customer case studies and testimonials or references and YouTube videos to actually back that up with the evidence that proves it, because that's what the buyers are looking for. They basically don't believe any marketing claims unless there's sort of some supporting evidence. Technology buyers more than ever want to get hands-on. So proofs of concept is really important, but particularly for SaaS vendors, just letting customers get hands-on with self-service access to the platforms. And related to that, increasingly buyers are looking for much more transparency around pricing. So the old kind of slightly opaque enterprise pricing where you never quite say how much your product costs, that's still very prevalent, of course, but the smart, often the newer vendors coming into the market are just putting their pricing on their website. That's what we've done at Coretta, actually. We go on our website, see how much we cost. Again, trying to eat our own dog food here, but definitely people want to know how much things cost. And top tip for people who are more on the sales side, the buyers say they absolutely hate salesmen that, or salespeople in general that won't give them the price of something. You know, they make the offer and suddenly they do another discount when they look like they're about to lose the deal. That just winds buyers up. They just want to know how much it's going to cost. So those are 4 big things. The final 5th point that we picked up on is around the question of sustainability and diversity and inclusion and corporate social responsibility. Do vendors need to invest in those things, especially when times are tough? I think both our research and I think also the DPP research showed that it's not a top factor for buyers. It's not going to be the one thing that decides whether they buy a particular product or not, but it nevertheless is a really important secondary factor for 2 reasons. Firstly, it's about the credibility of the vendor. If they've got a good story about their environmental policy and their CSR and their D&I, it's a good indication that they've got a good story about everything else. But also, buyers themselves are under pressure to deliver on internal things like carbon reduction targets. If their vendors can help them do that, that's a bonus.
Thank you, Rob. Interesting what you say about pricing. My podcast that I listened to on my walk at lunchtime was all around being transparent on price and how you should definitely have the details. Well, maybe not the exact pricing, but a price range on your website, and you talk to your customer about, you know, how the buying process with you works. So yeah, you've just ticked that box for me, Rob. John, what are your thoughts around Rob's points?
So there was a lot there. Yeah, I think, you know, the truth, right, is that people don't want to be sold to, right? They don't want, you know, a salesperson to come in and try to aggressively sell. They want us as vendors to help them, right? And so that's a coordinated effort between product, marketing, and sales to make sure that we're, you know, giving the information to the buyers to let them kind of guide themselves through the journey, and then can engage as they, you know, as they have questions or they need more information or they need to move into a buying process. And so I think that's a, you know, that's a shift that's been going on for a while, but it's something that's certainly top of mind here is, you know, how do we collectively, you know, provide value, not just with our products, but through the whole buying cycle, by helping, you know, educate customers on, you know, how we can help them and you know, and what they need to do to be successful with our products. You know, the leaders briefing, DPP leaders briefing, I don't want to take Claire's thunder, but there was a huge, the theme of a conversation there was really around operational efficiency, right? That was just a huge kind of tone this year going into next year, is everyone's trying to do more with less, right? Or more on, or do more with the same number of resources. And there was a great quote that said something like, you know, we've moved from we'll fix it in post to we'll fix it in ops. And that really resonated with me, because again, there's just so much pressure on these, you know, media companies to deliver more. And as vendors, we can really help them, but it may not be obvious, you know, because they're in the firestorm. And so how can we educate them along the way of, hey, here's some things that we're seeing from our lens of working with these other customers. Here's ways that you might be able to create some operational efficiencies using our products, or using this paradigm, or using this collection of products. You know, that's really what we're trying to do, is be more educating, but as I mentioned before, doing it in small snackable ways, because it's hard to get people's attention to sit down for an hour and really dive deep. So it's a challenge, but that's kind of, I think, aligns with what Rob was saying about building trust and providing value and transparency along the way. That's certainly what we're trying to do with our, integrated go-to-market efforts.
Excellent. And Claire, are you able to share your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think obviously, yeah, the days of the hard sell are long gone. So now we, as marketers, we really have to utilize content to make sure that we're staying in front of potential, for us, it will be potential members. Transparency is absolutely key. I think, people have so much choice now, and they don't want to have to keep chasing people for, the final detail and how much is this actually going to cost my business. So yeah, people have to really back up what they're trying to, the figures that they're presenting. And again, sustainability being another really key thing, as you saw at Leaders Briefing. We have the Committed to Sustainability program, and it's really kind of flying because vendors want to be able to proactively demonstrate that they do care, and it does help within the sales process. So yeah, I think and it's a great thing. It is a really great thing.
Yeah, and we're certainly seeing sustainability appearing a lot more on customers' RFPs and things like that. So I do think that it'll be a thing of 2003. And Ben, what are your thoughts?
So the one thing that really jumped out there, and I've been mulling it over while the other guys have been talking as well, is that you talked about having to, using case studies and showing what people are really, using our products for. And I think there's something interesting there. As an industry, we're not really culturally into giving reviews on things. I think it's one of those things, you hate it when nobody's given enough reviews to a restaurant on TripAdvisor already, but actually I very rarely do it either. But I think generally customers can be quite reluctant to get involved in case studies. Even when as a vendor, it's not like we're looking for an endorsement. We're just looking to, to tell the story of what someone's done with a tool or a set of tools. So I think that actually is actually a really big challenge, but I agree it's absolutely the way that we want to be doing things, showing how things are. But it was just a really interesting comment, because the buyers want case studies, but they very rarely give them. The other thing that jumped out again was the sustainability and sort of diversity and inclusion topics and corporate responsibility in general. I think you're right, Robin, that buyers don't necessarily, that's not top of their list. But what we are seeing, particularly as a company that's growing, is that it is at the top or towards the top of the list of the talent we're trying to bring into the business. And ultimately, businesses do, people do business, people do business with people. So we want that top talent in. So as a company, we still need to focus on those areas and have them very high on our priorities to make sure we're getting the best talent, because that best talent will ensure that the customers want to do business with us.
Indeed, indeed. Thanks, Ben. Let's move into next year and 2023, and I think the past 2 years have certainly forced organizations to adapt faster than ever before, and certainly maybe some of them make some bold choices and to think bigger in order to thrive. I think maybe in 2023 those smarter business will need to get a lot more focused, maybe pulling back on some of those experiments that aren't working and then looking at some of that long-term growth. That's certainly my personal views. I'm keen to hear from each of you, are we able to dive a little bit into your budgets as to, where you're going to be investing in 2023? Claire, let's come to you first on that one.
So a lot of my budget's going on MarTech. So as you know, we've alluded to earlier, we're implementing HubSpot. So we are, from a tactical point of view, we don't really do a lot of paid advertising. We are, as a association, we're lucky enough to have a lot of kind of micro influencers within our community. So yeah, I think our budget's going to go on MarTech.
Excellent. And influencer marketing is quite an interesting one. And all of the reports I've been reading about 2023 is it's the year of the influencer. Would any of you agree with that? And are any of you adopting that as a strategy? I've gone the silence.
It's definitely something we're looking at. Although I would also say that when we're thinking of influencers, we're not just thinking of influencers in our kind of space, if that makes sense. We as a company, believe that. Well, I don't say we believe it. We all know that the kind of media creation and broadcast or media distribution being democratized. So the media creators aren't just the big broadcasters and content owners. And to that extent, there are people out there who are one-man bands or, the YouTube stars or whatever that are using media workflows and that therefore we're probably looking more towards those kind of areas as the influencers we want to work with, to kind of have using, I think, to show it off to other people like them, as well as people working in professional environments that might be watching those kind of channels in their spare time. So we're kind of looking at it a little bit differently from just trying to work with influencers who are in the quote unquote media space. Yeah,
absolutely. So John, where are you going to be investing in 2023? I've seen how amazing your tech stack is, so I'm excited to hear what might be coming next.
Well, I would say, right, so Claire talked about investing in MarTech. So I think we've over the last 12 to 18 months have made significant investments in our marketing technology stack. And now we're, working hard on, getting the most out of that stack. So there's a lot of investment in, again, evolving our marketing. We're using a product called 6sense, which is an account-based marketing platform that, helps give insights into, which companies are doing what and showing intent and are the highest likely companies to have a need. So it's a really interesting platform, but it's super powerful, but also super complex. And so we're using it well, but we're investing a lot in fine tuning it and getting more out of that, because we are shifting more towards an account-based approach and integrated marketing and sales, and 6sense is kind of the backbone for that. So there's a lot of effort in that. A big piece of that, of course, goes back to content, which goes back to what Rob and Ben alluded to, telling customer stories. So that's something that we're trying to invest heavily in, is sharing more. We have thousands of companies who use Signiant to share content all over the world, and they're all using it in very interesting ways. And we're also investing in new capabilities that sort of extend beyond file transfer, but on top of that foundation that we built. So we need to do a lot of educating this year and share those customer stories. So there's a good amount of work going into that. But Ben mentioned it's hard to get, people don't necessarily in our industry love to put their name next to stuff. So we're trying to figure out how to maybe tell these stories more from a market perspective than an individual brand perspective, so that we can create more velocity there. But that's a big piece of what we're doing, is just getting those stories, getting them into snackable form, and then using our technology stack to make sure we're putting those stories in front of the right types of people. So segmenting our database and using 6sense in a more intelligent way to do that is a big piece of where we're investing.
Yeah, so content remains king.
Yeah, but a different content, I think, in much different forms than we've seen before, at least from a Signiant lens.
Exciting stuff. Come on, Ben, what are you going to be up to?
So it's interesting looking at the budget. I mean, events is still taking the lion's share of that, and 2, maybe 3 big events in particular, which I don't know, I'm not a huge fan of. But like I say, IBC looked like it's an incredible ROI for us, and we have to be driven by the data. So that's the right thing to do. Otherwise, like everyone says, it's all about the tech stack. We started from almost nothing a year ago, so we've spent a lot of this year getting up to speed and getting on top of HubSpot like everyone else. And, you know, we're really doubling down on that going into next year, you know, and that's been amazing, actually. Probably a highlight, I probably should have said. So the last month, going into our budgeting cycles in October, and having that data set to really start driving our decisions into 2023. And I'm here in Cologne because I've had an amazing week with my team. We've been here looking at all of our plans for next year. And as part of that, one of the things we've been doing is identifying where the gaps are in our data, and what KPIs we're not measuring or not able to measure at the moment. And I'm really excited about, you know, filling those gaps going into next year. Yeah, it's going to be good. But data, followed by content.
Excellent stuff. Go on, Ben.
No, and then trade shows.
Oh, and then trade shows at the end. Don't forget them, Ben. Rob, what about you?
Well, as analysts, I guess we also want to be data driven. So it's interesting to hear Ben say that. And I think one of the things, back to the content idea, do you make a video and put it on YouTube? Do you put a post on LinkedIn? Do you do a podcast? What do you do? And I think it's very hard. I think sometimes we can be guilty of doing what's interesting to do rather than what gets results. So what we're trying to do now, and it comes back to using HubSpot and other tools like Google Analytics in the right way, is actually measure what we do. And you know, we did after NAB, we did a kind of what are the key themes of NAB video, and I remember editing. You know, we filmed this video at the closing bell of NAB, and I edited it on the plane on the way home, and it took several hours to do, and it gets that many views on YouTube. And then you think I could have spent 40 minutes writing a really good post on LinkedIn and reach maybe 10 times that number of people. But then which of those people are going to convert and kind of interact with us in some way? So measuring that is going to be really important, and figuring out, do we want to do a TikTok video or not based on the data?
Oh, I'd like to watch you do a TikTok video.
There's an interesting thing there, Rob, and you mentioned LinkedIn earlier, and something jumped into my mind about that. And I won't go into our customer data, but I did look into some of our recruitment data, and I say we've been growing quite quickly in the last year. And what was really interesting is we had something like 10 times the number of applications from LinkedIn, or maybe even 20, than we were getting from direct referrals. So, you know, recommendations from colleagues, etc. But when you start to look down the funnel of who actually got interviewed, who actually got through second stage interviews, and who got hired, it was actually 1-to-1. And the interesting thing is, I was discussing this with our head of people and culture, and, you know, she was saying, can we do some promotion on LinkedIn, because that's where the majority of our candidates come from? I'm like, yeah, it is, but actually, should we be looking at some employee incentives to recommend and do that kind of thing? I mean, and I know a lot of companies do, this isn't rocket science, but it was just interesting looking at that data. And interestingly as well, looking at the same kind of contact funnel data that we have from social media. Yes, LinkedIn has our highest engagement by a margin compared to Facebook and Twitter and other things. But actually, it's only about 50% higher in terms of acquired contacts compared to Facebook. So although it's 10, 20 times higher, it's you know, and actually in terms of the funnel, you know, we have to be careful where we put that attention. And you're absolutely right. Where do we put the video, right? I mean, LinkedIn seems like an obvious choice, but is it always?
Yeah, interesting. It's interesting as well, as we talk about using CRMs, and we're all doing that clearly, is thinking about how to enrich the data that are in those CRMs. So from a product perspective, in the coming year, we now have a great database that provides a base level of data about who is buying what in the industry and the value of that market. So that's really useful for marketing people to use as part of their decision-making process. But as we then build tools on top of that data, we're starting to think about how we can do things like enrich people's CRM data with sort of buying intent and so on. So that's going to be an interesting area. So it's good to hear that everybody's so data-driven and using CRM tools.
Yeah.
Certainly HubSpot's very good at extracting money out of us.
Yes. Looking forward to hearing more about HubSpot next week. Definitely. I think moving on, obviously there's going to be some great investments there, but being realistic, 2023 could be quite a challenging year. I'm keen to hear from each of you, you know, what might some of those hurdles be as an industry that we might face? Hopefully we don't get COVID back, but you know, what things as an industry, you know, the supply chain issues, some of those things that as a marketeer we're going to have challenges with. John, maybe I'll come to you on that one first.
So there's two things that kind of jump to mind. So one is, you know, I mentioned this whole, you know, the pressure on operations to do more with less, which is a great opportunity for vendors to help come in and create efficiencies, but that also means you're inherently selling to people who are way busier in 23 than they were in 22, right? Their teams might have shrunk, or they might just you know, have more projects piled on them with the same number of resources. And so how do you find their time to educate them and get them to engage? I think that's really top of mind for me, is the people that we're selling to just seem to have gotten so much busier over the last few years than you know, it's always been a hair on fire industry, but it seems like that's really magnified as, you know, we've gone through this pandemic and now into, you know, this sort of uncertain economic times. So that's and then couple that with what we talked about before, which is trying to get face time so you can have really meaningful discussion. And we hear this all the time. We're like, oh, hey, I'm going to be in LA. Can we get some time? Well, I'm only in the office on Tuesdays. And because I'm only in the office on Tuesday, my calendar is completely jammed. So let's do this on Zoom. And it's like, well, this conversation needs a whiteboard. And, you know, I'm trying to help you, you know, we want to come in and help you, but we need, you know, we really need your focus, and we need you know, a few different people in the room, and trying to get that same level of interaction on Zoom is just challenging. And so I would say those are the two forces that are really on my mind. The opportunity is there to help these companies do more with less, but getting their time and their attention to really understand and you know, and move things forward. It's just tricky right now. And that's something that we're, you know, really thinking about, is how to invest in the right areas and, you know, marketing, product, sales, so that you know, so we can say, hey, you know, get someone to say, oh yeah, you know what, I need to stop and take a look at this now.
Yeah. And Claire, what are your thoughts?
I think something that could be quite problematic is, you know, after COVID, there was a lot of market movement. People were moving around. So it's rebuilding that, you know, your data, those new relationships. I've only been in the industry for 9 months, so I'm not fully qualified to to talk about the state of the industry. But yeah, for us, I think it's definitely just trying to replenish our data and make that work harder for us.
Yeah, people have definitely moved around somewhat. So yes. And Ben? Have we lost him?
Has his band?
He's on mute.
Oh, he's on mute.
I have myself on mute, but yeah, I also have some robots. Yeah, I don't know. I think I'm very optimistic about next year. I don't think anything's going to be a challenge. It's going to be great.
Oh.
Joking. I think actually, genuinely, I think we are going to have to, you know, look very carefully about where we spend. I am pretty optimistic in general, but the challenge this year, like I say, was really the fact that all these events came back. I personally feel that there was a bit of a, you know, there was this rush to it. And interestingly, like I say, I'm in Cologne this week, and just looking at the Christmas markets, they're absolutely packed compared to 2019. They're absolutely packed. And I don't believe that will sustain into next year. And similarly, I don't believe that the events that we saw, in 2023 there'll be quite that level of energy in 22 and 22. I don't believe that energy will be there in 23. So it's going to be very difficult for us as marketeers to make sure that we're really getting maximum bang for buck on our spend. And if we do come under pressure to reduce budgets for whatever reason, then I think that's going to get really, you know, even harder. Yeah. Agreed.
Rob, final word to you on that one.
Well, I think let's not talk ourselves into a recession just yet. As I said, I think there's a danger of that, but I think people will be investing money smarter. I mean, the crucial thing when times are tough is it's the strongest players who invest through that will come out stronger at the other end. So it's about using all of the things that we talked about, being smart, using data to make the right decisions. I think that's more crucial than ever. I think there will obviously be some discretionary spending that gets cut. I agree with Ben. I think it was brilliant to see the trade shows come back this year. I think they will also be successful next year, but I think people will send fewer, companies will send fewer people, because the cost, I mean, we all saw the cost of Las Vegas and Amsterdam was even greater this time round than it has been in the past. So you've got to make that work. But I think, you use data wherever it's from CRM or the sort of industry data that we provide, or the DPP provides, to make the kind of smart decisions and survive this period, and the strong companies will come out the other end.
Most definitely, most definitely. I want to finish off by looking internally and looking at team dynamics, and obviously the way marketeers work has changed, but there's also that talk about blurred lines between sales and marketing. We love to talk about the sales and marketing dynamics, but hearing a lot of people who are in the marketing leaders circle, their roles are changing. They're going to be reporting into the sales team rather than it being marketing led. Keen to hear how your team dynamics are changing or could change in 2023, and some of the training and new kind of talent that you're going to be looking for to drive your marketing teams forward. Ben, we'll come to you on that one first.
Yeah, so I think interestingly, at Pixope, we don't have a sales team and a marketing team. We have a revenue team, and within that we have a global marketing team and then regional sales teams reporting into different VPs. So we are one team, and the lines are blurred. I think there has been for a while, and there definitely is for marketing leaders, that kind of this what's the word? I have to prove what revenue I'm bringing, and this idea of revenue marketing and being able to demonstrate exactly how much, or at least how much, I'm contributing in terms of dollar to the company. So I think we almost are part of the marketing team, and we've had some really interesting discussion about if we were going to hire sales development representatives or business development representatives, actually which team do they sit in? Are they in a global marketing team or in the regional sales team? It's like, well, actually it doesn't really matter, but the lines are that blurred between teams because of there is a funnel, and at some point there is a handover, but it's it really depends on your business where that is. So yeah, I mean, I think there is a lot of overlap. Again, having been with the team this week, one thing that we are finding a challenge in some places is very clear definition of who's responsible to do what, so things don't fall down gaps, which needs to be updated and redefined frequently. But generally, yeah, we work very, very closely with our colleagues in the regional sales team. So yeah, one revenue team.
And Ben, you've been recruiting of late. Has that been a challenge to try and find the right people?
Very recently, no, because some other companies have let some really good people go. but over the year as a whole, I think it's been challenging. I think you have to acknowledge as an employer that good people want to work differently, and that's not what we're here to talk about. But I'm very lucky in that I got the freedom to recruit wherever in the world. We were just looking for talent wherever they were. We weren't restricted by geography or even particularly looking for X years experience or something. We were just looking for the right talent, and that was a huge benefit. And I think there is that shift in working styles that's important as well.
Yeah. So Claire, what are your thoughts here? You've got a small team. How are those dynamics changing?
They're not. Well, they are and they're not. So yeah, as a small team, I think you all work hand in glove, really. The change this year will be that myself and Abdul are writing the sales and marketing strategy. So we're not working separate of one another. Yeah, so a lot of what we do crosses over, and as Ben says, you don't want anything to fall between the gaps, so you do have to work closely. Do I think that sales should manage marketing departments. No, I don't think so. I think, you know, we are specialists. We have different, we bring different skills to the table. So I don't know, I agree on that, but it is happening to a lot of my marketing counterparts in different companies. Yeah, I think that's.
And in terms of your technology developments and building on your tech stack, are you having to recruit there to support those investments?
No, so we're training from the
Training
ground up.
yourself.
Yeah, which is exciting, you know.
Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. And John, how about you?
Marketing reporting into sales, not on my watch, no. And I say that not from a point of ego or anything. I say it from a point of what Rob talked about is the world we can't be a sales driven world. That's not what the customers want. So we sort of put the product, you know, product is sort of front and center. And then, you know, marketing is the team that in most cases is starting the conversation and then handing it to sales. So we don't look at it necessarily as, oh, marketing and sales, you know, obviously we work together, but we look at it more on a program by program basis. So for example, the BDR program, the BDRs report into sales and, you know, they have their own comp plans and all of that. But the program is an integrated program that has a bunch of marketing people working on it, a bunch of salespeople working on it. And the program is largely, you know, developed and designed by marketing with a lot of input from sales. So, you know, and the same thing for something like, you know, NAB or IBC, that's a big investment. That's a, you know, something that marketing kind of drives the program. But of course, we have to do it in conjunction with the sales team that are going to be there on the street. So each of these programs has integrated components, and the level of input is sort of dependent on the type of program. There are some, you know, digital programs that we do that have no sales input, right? And there are some programs that have a, you know, heavy sales component to it with a little bit of marketing. So it really varies there. But again, I think just going back to the theme of companies, you know, they want to partner with their vendors and be educated and not sold to. And so we have to have kind of, to me, product front and center, you know, marketing starting the conversation and figuring out the right appropriate time to hand that off to sales. And that has to be an integrated approach, and it has to be sort of program by program, at least from, you know, from a Signiant perspective. Indeed.
And will you be expanding your team in any areas in 23?
Yes, working on the plan now, but we'll be growing a little bit. We grew a little bit this year, and we'll grow a little bit next year.
That's good to hear. Rob, I wanted to finish off with you on this, and I've seen you present the research at another event, and, you know, talking about the sales and marketing roles. There was a piece in your research, and this comes back to trade shows, where you suggested that the customer, you know, really has made that buying decision before they get face to face, and the person that they want to see on the trade show booth is the tech person, the person behind the technology. Are you able to expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, I think it comes back to the idea that companies that have products that people want to buy, I mean, salespeople would shoot me down for saying this, but really those products should be selling themselves. And the job of marketers is to explain to customers and make sure it's clear that customers understand what those products do and how they can help. And if you do a good job with that, then really certainly the job of the sales team is easier. And I think part of that is then selling the capabilities of the whole company. Customers want to buy into, as we said earlier, not just the product, but they want to buy into the capabilities of the people in the company that could deliver it. One of my favorite stories, I think we talked about this at IBC, Lisa, was one vendor who we talked to as part of our research, who said that one trade show, everyone had gone for lunch and left a relatively junior member of the staff on the booth, whose day job was running the help desk or being on the support team desk. And a vendor came up. That individual didn't try to pretend that they were a salesperson or oversell or anything. They just talked about what they did, delivering support and how they did it. And the customer was apparently so impressed by this that they kind of had this genuine commitment to giving good customer support that they ended up agreeing a deal as a result of that. So I thought that was really interesting. There's one thing that I would add as well to what everyone else had said, which is an area that we're going to focus on. And I think it's important for all kind of subscription or SaaS-based companies focus on. I think our investment in this coming year is going to be on customer success. So for us, we spend a lot of time through our marketing and, you know, ultimately our own reputations in the industry to work with new clients. Obviously, then we want to not lose them again. And part of that is understanding how they're getting on with us, how they're using our services and tools, and making sure that we can really respond to their needs. So we're going to focus on making sure that we can help people get the most out of what we do, and make sure we kind of understand what they want, because that's also going to feed back into better products based on what people actually want rather than what we think they might want.
Yeah, it's music to my ears. You know, I'm a massive champion of customer forums, bringing the community together and getting them to talk so we can get that feedback. So yeah, that's definitely a star in my mind. Thanks, Rob. We have run out of time. Thank you so much to the panel for sharing their thoughts. I can't wait to see what happens in 23, and I can't wait for us to be back here this time next year to reflect. Thank you all really very much for joining us, and look forward to seeing you soon.